This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. We're going to bring our guests on today. We have Nolan Del Campo.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Oh, you sound great. And Terry Batcher.
Hiya, kids. Hiya.
Good morning. And Harriette Sucher.
Yep. Good morning, everybody.
Good
Hello.
Hotter than Hades, Lake County.
morning. All right. Well,
1:10
presentation
today,
because I have some things that Terry said.
Anyways,
I'm going to pull the presentation up and go over some things here that Terry had just sent me recently. I only got it into the presentation this morning, but he was still hot to trot on those 11, 22, and 13, you said, messages?
11, 13, 22 was the murder date.
Oh.
11, 13, 22. There are 13.
All right. Well, so we're going to just brief this really quick, only because this isn't part of my presentation. Obviously, being in 2022 does not have anything to do with Jack Terrence, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have something to do with the group that we feel he may be affiliated with. So
I guarantee it has something to do with Jack Terrence big time.
Mm-hmm.
I will show you that event big time. Aerial views, all works big time.
Well, the connections may be there, and I think connections can be made. I mean, I think they did, what was it, between Abe Lincoln and then somebody else? They had like over 100 connections that was consistent with his situation, and in another situation as a coincidence almost 100 years later. So go ahead with this. It looks like you have some pictures of one of the victims from the 11, 13, 22 murders.
Right, that's victim Kaylee Gonzalez. Look, her eyes are looking hard to one side or the other with the fake eyelashes. She made more poses like that. And the murders happened on 11, 13, 22 on King Road. And King is a big number in the Zodiac Jack business. And we found recently, you and I and everybody together, we reviewed the 7-11, 11 being, and how he made his 11s, how he encrypted his 11s. So I took that same thing to the Ramsey murder note and found that there are 13 each of these number 11s on the first page and a total of 22 in all. That's big because I have on that stack, I have King 11, 13, 22 as the primary stack. It also has a 7-11 hint with his partitions and a 911 hint as well. So I went back to the 13 cards, which I think is on your next page I sent you.
Yep.
Or one of the next pages. And that has, you'll find that you can see those eyes are looking really hard to the left in this instance. There should be more of Kaylee Gonzalez because I've seen them, but I couldn't find them today. But I count 13 each of those eyes. One of them is looking through a knot hole, so that's an odd number. But the card is labeled, we call it the 14 card. Well, in fact, he gets on the next Seeker Pal going over to the side there, the Seeker Pal skeleton card. He's got, he's in his hand, he's got the number 14. Well, the only thing 14 on that page I could find was there are 14 of the ribs, of the square ribs that he's put on there. And the other little things like there's little Delta, I don't know if they meant Delta Airlines. I noted that while I was there. And also in the upper left-hand corner, I circled the little DB Cooper jet that's in that. So, and then I also think, and this is your work, Nanette, that he may be trying to say that this is part of his injury for when he jumped out. Notice the strain on the legs and on the stuff as though, he's hurting. One eye is different than the other.
This card came out before the jump.
Well, maybe he thought he was going to get hurt. I don't know. I just put it up there. I didn't research the timing. You're good at timing. You're very good. You said something about 13 hole punches. I'd forgotten about that. That's why we have you. But I'm saying that this stuff, this stuff happened to me with the Idaho 4 case. Unfortunately, like the Zodiac Killer stuff, it fell in my lap and I was going to leave, but I couldn't leave because it drew me back in with too much stuff. Way too much. I don't know about Lincoln. I don't doubt what you're saying about that. There's a lot of that kind of poetry.
Let's wrap up how King. Well, let's wrap up. We're going to wrap up hopefully in this podcast the connection of King and everything else. But first, we're going to go ahead and start with a little bit of information for people who aren't completely aware of who Nixon was and how he played out in our society. Nixon was born into a poor family of Quakers in a small town in Southern California. He graduated from Duke Law School in 1937 and practiced law in California. Then he moved with his wife, Pat, to Washington in 1942 to work for the federal government. After active duty in the Naval Reserve during World War II, he was elected to the House of Representatives in 1946. His work on the Alger Hiss case established his reputation as a leading anti-communist, which elevated him to national prominence. And in 1950, he was elected to the Senate. Nixon was the running mate of Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now we see the Eisenhower stamps that the Zodiac is consistently using in all of his stuff. The Republican Party's presidential nominee in 1952 election and served for 8 years as the vice president. He ran for president in 1960, narrowly lost to John F. Kennedy, then failed again in 1962 race for governor of California, after which time it was widely believed that his political career was over. However, in 1968, he made another run for the presidency and was elected, narrowly defeating Hubert Humphrey. And we just got done talking about how Howard Hughes was playing both, trying to fund both, either Hubert Humphrey or Nixon into office, and George Wallace in a close contest. Money from the mob, Howard Hughes, and Rebozo. Sometimes I'm a little ahead of myself. Nixon ended American involvement in Vietnam combat in 1973, and with it, the military draft that same year. He visit to China in 1972, eventually led to diplomatic relations between the two nations, and he also then conducted the anti-ballistic missile treaty with the Soviet Union. In step with his conservative beliefs, his nation incrementally transferred power from the federal government to the states. Nixon's domestic policy saw him impose wage and price controls for 90 days, enforce desegregation of Southern schools, establish the Environmental Protection Agency, and begin the war on cancer. Additionally, his administration pushed for the Controlled Substances Act and began the war on drugs. He also presided over the Apollo 11 moon landing. There's another Zodiac hint, which signaled the end of the space race. He was elected with a historic electoral landslide in 1972 when he defeated George McGovern. June 17th, 1972, there's a break-in of the Democratic Watergate building. Oh, that's all I had on him.
Quick,
One quick point.
Nixon on the 68 election, the only reason he won is because Robert F. Kennedy got assassinated right after the California Democratic primary. Kennedy would have trounced him.
And Hughes probably
and
earned
George
his
Wallace
money.
also, there was an attempt to assassinate him. He got shot and he lived the rest of his life in a wheelchair.
Oh my gosh.
Hughes earned his money. He was not a mobster necessarily. He earned his money. His dad made big money. They made money on they patented the drill for oil drilling, the type of drill that they use.
Of course, oil.
But he made his money. He earned his money. He wasn't a mobster.
Well, he took money from the mob. I don't know what that
took
makes
money
you,
from
but
You know, there are strange bedfellows in the political arena, you know.
Yeah.
well, that brings us back to our first murder in a little bit here. On November 4th of 1973, we had Laura Odell in San Francisco. She was found strangled and nude and left in similar locations to the other murders that were occurring there. I did not find any information on her, and it's possible she's one of the victims listed on the Sandy Betts murder map. And then we're going to see him hopping back to the DC area to instill that the serial killer is really still there. This particular slide side is really just depicting what they were asking people to write, the suspects that were coming in. The FBI was asking them to actively write different messages that the Zodiac had written. And this one actually caught me, and I've talked about it a couple times, but we see these belltop A's over here. So he was instructed to specifically, whoever the suspect was instructed specifically to write these belltop A's. And if anybody is familiar with the images of the Zodiac letters that are found on the internet today, you will not find belltop A's in those communications, which has led me to believe that these have been removed when these images have been altered and put back online for us to see. And I'm wondering if it wasn't in part because we saw the huge change with Voight taking everything down from the AOL server and all the old information and letters and everything that he had at the same time, or roughly about the same time. I want to say it was 2003. 2005 that I saw everything that was ripped down because I could go on the Wayback Machine and see things up to that point. Either way, that tells me or leads me to believe they're looking for something that we're not aware of. And the second that Dennis came out with Jack and he did belltop A's in his natural writing, all of a sudden, boom, we see the non-existent belltop A that they're asking suspects to write.
Right. I got tons more of those hints and clues about things that have gone mysteriously missing. But go ahead, continue.
Oh, yeah. A lot of has gone missing.
A lot of stuff.
Now, they had something called the unknown. It's an unknown date, but it was called the trailer writing. And of course, it's referring back to Herb Cain, which we know the Zodiac did write him or about him. This is supposedly left in a trailer where a movie was being filmed, but I don't know which movie. I don't know if they even asked or stated on this. Either way, it was considered a hoax, but an answer to asking for more proof and the happy to supply more material is definitely on. On November 8th, 1973, handwriting sample is taken from another suspect with the message. So this must have been written previous to the request, but we can see, and I believe this one over here is Arthur Lee Allen. If I'm not mistaken, them asking him to actually write this particular image to the left over here. And we see that this one is very much like the letter, the Count Marco letter that we talked about last week with the long, long drawn. So again, who knows what the where this actually came from or who actually wrote it, but it's definitely got some interesting things going on it that are consistent with what we've been seeing.
And fanciful.
Very fanciful. Now, and that's what cracked me up about that girl you said I wasted too much time on last week, but I have to just take this second to say this. I literally made it through all my slides last week, even spending too much time on that YouTuber's comments, and she thought it was a Harmon brother out of Disney that had actually written the Count Marco letter. I don't believe that, but she called it not. She called it critical of her than you. She called it not as disguised when I find it's extremely disguised because nobody writes that way on purpose.
Right.
So back to a few more murders. November 11th of 1973, Valerie Lane and Doris Derryberry in Olive Hurst abduction here in California. They were found 13 miles from Marysville. They were clothed, they were shot, and I do not show them on the murder map of Sandy Betts. On December 2nd, 1973, we have Michael Shane and Kathy Fechtel in Livermore, 19 days before the winter solstice. I only put that in there. I know that we have focused a little bit on Jack's ranching knowledge, being he was born on a ranch. He knows what the solstices are just by the Farmer's Almanac. He would know completely when the moons are coming, when the planting seasons are, when the solstices are. He absolutely would be aware of those.
Absolutely.
On, December 22nd of 1973, we have 23-year-old Teresa Walsh in Mark West Creek, Santa Rosa. This actually, I think this is the end of the Santa Rosa killings. And then I entered some information in regards to Bohemian Grove, which was something that was taking place out there. So Teresa Walsh, do you have any information on her, Harriette?
Teresa Walsh is actually no such person. And I did an anagram of all the evidence. She's actually Rebe Walsh, and Jack is clarifying that she traded IDs for Jeanette Kamahili, who were born basically, I would say, days apart. And he grabs the wrong girl, and it's Jeanette Kamahili that ends up where they say Teresa Walsh ended up. So I do have the decoded missives, but I think we covered that a little bit last week. It has something to do. Yeah, but definitely, and I'm seeing him over and over and over again bringing up about the mistake that happened with Jeanette Kamahili because they were to get Rebe Walsh. And
so then let's see what they have to say about this. So last seen by friends in Zuma Beach in Southern California, hitchhiking north on Highway 101 to Miranda, California, where her parents lived with her young son. Her body was found in Mark West Creek in Santa Rosa, California, December 28th of 1973. She had been raped, bound, and strangled. Hitchhiking from Zuma Beach or Malibu Beach, Gerberville. Raped, bound, and strangled, dumped near where Kim Allen was found in 1972. And I do show that this particular murder is on the Sandy Betts murder map. It says she was found by kayakers in the Mark West Creek. The site is a few miles south and downstream of the Friends Valley Road, which I spelled that's supposed to be Friends, Frienz, right? I spelled friends, or it spell checked me. Location where the bodies, or the previous 3 bodies, had been found, and north of where Lori Cursa and Kim Allen had been found. Her body was found lodged under a half-submerged log in Mark West Creek during a period of high water flows. Stacking of things on top of the body, which is something we've seen happen in some of these cases. The authorities suspected that she might have been thrown into the creek somewhere upstream and washed down to the location where she was found. An autopsy revealed that she had suffered a severe injury to the back of her head, which may have contributed to her death, quite like John Benet Ramsey, but the cause of death was listed as strangulation. She had been hogtied, and we've seen hogtying occur in these crimes as well, with a nylon rope, which was tied to her ankles in such a way that she probably slowly strangled to death. So basically, he applied the noose to her neck and tied it back to her feet. And
well, I was going to say, I have it right here. If I could just read it, because all the evidence you just read.
Well, let me finish. Yeah. But yeah, let me finish. So the nylon rope is similar to the clotheslines and parachute cords used in many of the crimes. She'd been sexually assaulted. Her thumbs had been tied together and her hands pulled down between her legs. Walsh was the mother of a 2-year-old boy and was last seen hitchhiking on Highway 101 near Malibu. She was headed towards the Humboldt County town of Miranda, about 10 miles north of Garberville, intending to spend the holidays with her family. So go ahead and read your solve.
Yeah, okay. And it's in America's Most Evil, a very big book, too big for one. Anyways, it comes out as, all the evidence, just anagramming it. It says, hi, Dick Nixon, Diplomat Hotel, John Walsh 2, BHS, that's Bahamas, CIA, check to name. Wife Rebe is Teresa. They're the same. And then it's saying 9554. That's the zip code, just where you were talking about. Bebe sold Irish Republican Army Hoffa's, Pat Bum Hoffa's, cocaine from 30,000 PCH, a Pacific Coast Highway 90265. That's Zuma Beach, which is very wealthy, $1 million homes in 1970s. Anyways, from 95404 Lorraine Way, cul-de-sac, 1973. Teresa and Kamahili, 23, switch ID, came to north off highway vehicle, Lower Lake, December 22nd, 1973. All 8, 2 peyote buttons, husband, hogtie Kamahili, fornicate, I goofed, grabbed wrong high girl, dump in Mark West Creek, under log, I'll grab son, rip off head in Indian River County, place remains in BLM at the same Marie Onstay, that's the North OHB spot, and Eva Blau spot location. And then he's saying, Dick Nixon, Sterling Weber Allen is done by fucking, sorry to say it, he's rarely cussing, by 458 Ken Narlow. He's saying Ken Narlow did those girls and killed them. Anyways, and then it's signed Zodiac.
Now, so let everybody understand, because I don't think I realized this until yesterday, but peyote is mescaline, correct?
Oh, yeah. And it has It has levels of strychnine in it too. That's where the okay. You keep going.
Well, because Anstey and Eva Blau were both known to have been killed with mescaline, right? Overdose of mescaline.
Yeah.
Mescaline's refined.
I got solves about that.
Peyote
wow.
is a natural plant thing, and mescaline is a derivative. It's a chemical.
Gotcha.
Derivative.
Yeah.
Stronger.
Okay.
So they would.
So it's still in. It's still the message coming out talking about peyote. Then what's that? Say that again, Harriette.
They would find the mescaline stuff in the autopsies. So
if they were taking peyote.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So December 27th.
But that's Jack.
That's okay. December 27th, 1973, Barbara Smith found on Road Street in Albany, New York. So now we see this move back to Albany, New York, which we just had the letter come in from a couple weeks ago. She lived on Hamilton Street. She was found close to St. Philip's Daycare on Road Street, bludgeoned to death with a rock after bullet failed to penetrate her skull. This is the end of the DC Freeway Phantom forever, and we won't see any more of these murders. But once this is gone, and once never mind. This is the last one. Okay. End of the DC Freeway Phantom, just like they want us to believe about the Zodiac. And we see the Albany letter. Dewhurst is actually saying at this particular, and I wanted to point out over here. So Barbara Smith is found here on Road Street. And we see here is the Albany Medical Center and the Veteran Affairs Medical Center. So it's all still circulating around Albany Medical Center, just as the letter predicted. Dewhurst shows that Jack is going with the family for a movie at about this time, as we're getting ready to flip into 1974. Jack was introduced to Nora as a consolation prize for introducing her best friend, Roger Steenbergen, to Nora's sister, when truly Jack wanted Nora's sister. So this was interesting information in Dewhurst's book that I didn't even know existed. This was a couple's date, and it makes far more sense that Jack is not seen in Nora's life or his belongings until this time frame. Sure, they watched this movie during winter of 73, 74, but I bet it didn't come up in conversation until the next sample of handwriting is taken from the suspect. Now let's cover the time frame. Dennis has been wrong about where Jack has been before because his memories are limited. I mean, he was 4 years old when he met Jack. Limited to occasions rather than actual time leading up to it. And after, as seen in 1996, when Jack goes missing for almost a month during the execution of the John Benet Ramsey letter, when Dennis declares that Jack was with him that Christmas, but Nora's diary showing a completely different appearance. So Dennis, his memory led up to the holiday that he knows that Jack was there, which made him believe Jack was with him the entire time when Jack had actually left the family for about 30 days. Some information from Dennis Coffin's book in regards to what's going to occur here in 1974. It says, I realize now that Jack got together with my mother to use her and her children as a shield to hide behind. He was living alone in his camper when they met. His writing kills me. A noticeable than a man, wife, and 3 young children. He walked into a ready-made family. What a perfect cover. He moved into our apartment, and now he appeared to be just a common family man. My 2 younger sisters took to him right away. They called him Dad and eventually took his last name. I never felt right calling him Dad. I always called him Jack. I never took his last name. I remember one night, not long after he met my mother, I was awakened by this woman screaming. I don't remember where we were. I just remember it was at night and it was raining. When I woke up, I was laying in the front seat of our car. I lifted my head up to see what was going on, and Jack was chasing this woman around the car. I laid back down and pretended to be sleeping. I don't know what happened to the woman. I never asked. Now, just a flip back really quick. Deborah Perez, when she attempted to come out and claim the wrong suspect with the help of my previous mentor and people involved with the Chronicle and disbarred attorneys related to F. Lee Bailey, she used a very similar story in hers. So it was almost as if she was mimicking the things that Dennis had said in order to just cause confusion, like, oh, she had the hood, or Paul Stein's glasses. Like, she made a lot of stuff up that was found to be a lie. He says, we lived in Tahoe until 1970. What's that?
Did Perez the one that did the press conference in San Francisco to announce that he thought she had the...
It was a faker.
Okay.
Yeah. And my mentor claimed that she had a genetic predisposition to write like the Zodiac because she was his daughter. And I found out that she was actually adopted by the man she was blaming. So there's no genetic predisposition there. It says we lived in Tahoe until 1973 when we moved to a little town. It is about 15 miles south of Placerville. Jack claimed he hurt his back while working in Tahoe and had gotten a settlement for his injuries. He bought 12 acres from my grandfather in Mount Auckham. But I don't show 1973 and 1974. I show he is still fighting work comp, asking for money. So I'm not sure where Dennis's perception of where he got this money from. Let's see. While living there, I remember one day when Jack told me to jump in the car because he wanted to go for a ride. We went down to the Consumnes River. It must have been early spring because the river was way too full to be summer. Him and I were standing next to the river, and he looked at me and he said he was going to teach me how to swim. He grabbed me and threw me in and said, "Swim or drown." That river was very swift, and I remember finally making it out way downstream. Looking back, I don't think that he had planned on me making it out of the river. When I came walking back, he just kind of played it off by telling me that was the way his dad taught him how to swim. Jack was a hunter, and there was plenty of land around here to hunt. He would take me with him sometimes. I remember when we went at night, he would mount a flashlight on top of his gun. You could see eyes from animals at night with the flashlight. Then you would just aim right between them. In 1974, Zodiac mailed at least 3 letters, and they were mailed from the Bay Area. If we were living near Placerville, how could he have mailed these letters? He says, Jack was gone a lot. I remember that, but I needed something more specific. On January 1974, Zodiac mailed his first letter in almost 3 years, and it was mailed from Sunnyvale. That made sense because Jack's son from his first marriage lived in Sunnyvale, and Jack made frequent trips to see him. The letter Zodiac mailed mentioned the movie The Exorcist. That made it even more likely to be Jack because a month earlier when we were in Tahoe for Christmas, and while we were there, Jack, my mother, her sister, and her husband all went to the theater and saw The Exorcist. All right, so that gives us a little more context as to Jack having been in Nora's life before, obviously, 1974 and 1973, because she is indicating that Nora introduced her sister to Ronald Steenbergen. Jack was a consolation prize as a couple's date when he really wanted Nora's sister and ends up being with Nora. So if she's already married to her husband at this point, that had to have taken place clearly before the Exorcist movie. Okay. So when we lived in Mount Auckham, we lived on deer meat practically. I remember that Jack was good friends with the El Dorado County Sheriff named Bill White. We used to bring him deer meat all the time. On morning 2 of my uncles came and woke Jack up. It was still dark outside. They told Jack that they had a couple deer that they needed to be dressed. They told Jack that he could have one if he showed them how to dress them. Jack agreed. One thing they failed to mention was that they had been shooting all over the canyon trying to hit one. Someone reported the gunshots to the police. Jack went down to where the deer were and started to clean them. Jack heard something and stopped and listened, then continued. Then the spotlights came on. It was the police. They were all 3 arrested for poaching. His friend, Bill White, the sheriff, was one of the arresting officers. Later that day, when Jack got out of jail, he said he was going to get Bill White one way or another. A couple weeks later, Jack and I were going somewhere, and we saw Bill White's patrol car in front of this bar. It was in a little town called River Pines. We pulled in, and Jack told me that he would be right back. A couple minutes later, I hear Jack yelling at Bill. I heard Bill tell Jack that he had to arrest him because of the other officers that were there. Then I turned around to see what was happening, and Jack was beating the shit out of Bill. About the time a bunch of guys came out of the bar to help Bill White, they helped Bill get Jack handcuffed and into the back seat of the patrol car. Jack was on his way to the El Dorado County Jail once again. My mother picked me up a little while later. We got back home, and my mother called the jail to see about getting Jack out, but his bail was too much, so he would have to wait until Monday to see if the judge would lower his bail. Monday morning, the phone rang. It was Jack. He was out of jail, and all of his charges had been dropped. We went to the Placerville. Right. We went to Placerville. It gets better. We went to Placerville to pick him up. His face was black and blue. It looked like he had been hit by a Mack truck. Mom asked how he got the charges dropped, he said it was easy. When him and Bill White got to the jail, Bill opened the back door of the patrol car. I kicked him in the chest with both feet. I had to make him mad so he would use that billy club on me, and I was successful. I pissed him off so bad. He worked me over with his club. On Monday, I knew my face would look its worst. The judge walked into the courtroom this morning and said, "My God, what happened to you?" I told him to ask Bill White. He said, "Bill, did you do this to this man?" Bill tried to say something, but the judge told him he wanted to see him in his chambers. Minutes later, the judge said, "Jack, could you come back here?" When I got to his chambers, the judge said, "Jack, I will drop the charges if you agree not to file a lawsuit." And Jack happily agreed. Jack knew exactly what to do to avoid going to jail. A couple months later, Jack was sentenced to 30 days in jail for poaching. When we picked him up, we didn't recognize him at first. He had shaved his head. This was to change his looks to avoid detection. Wow. Very interesting. He's stoked. Now, so here's at the point in time when I actually start seeing this red Chevy pickup, and there is some conversations about a red pickup in some of the information we've seen from witnesses in some of these crimes. But this is up at the Mount Oncom residence, where we know that Jack and Nora and the family are now living with Dennis and his sisters. And I just kind of pulled it up just to see what kind of truck this was, and it turns out to definitely be a Chevy based on the body style. We can see this one over here on the right-hand side is a 73 Chevy pickup truck.
Chevy and GMC.
That brings us to our first King connection. We just got off of your King connections with Speak King and King Road. This is also a connection to Nixon. I also believe a connection to Martin Luther King as it pertains to Rebozo and Nixon, discussing how Nixon feels about Martin Luther King, and that Rebozo appreciates his stance on Martin Luther King. So one of the letters that I pulled from the FOIA file, it says, let's see, May 17th, 1974, a source who has provided reliable information in the past advised as follows. Norman Casper, who is the leasing company business on Key Biscayne, Miami, Florida, recently traveled to Paradise Island, Bahamas. Ooh, you just mentioned Bahamas, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's the place.
And interviewed
John Walsh's connection.
It says, and interviewed one Dorothy Laverne. Laverne supposedly had information concerning $100,000 that Mr. Rebozo had deposited in a vault at Paradise Island. Basis for the interview was supposed to be that Rebozo allegedly attempted to dry clean the $100,000 by exchanging new money for old money in the Paradise Island vault. Casper reportedly told Laverne he was a private detective conducting his interview with her at the request of Mr. Rebozo and President Nixon. So isn't that interesting? Go ahead.
I want to interject that the Prime King thing that I got was from the August 4th, 1969 debut letter of This is a Zodiac Speaking.
I know. And I know the relation to that is to Tim King and to Barry King.
But go ahead.
Right. Yep. But that King just keeps coming around and popping up. So we have this postcard. We have this postcard that's either, do you know if it's May 2025, Harriette?
I got it as, I think it's, oh God, come on, I got it right here. It's May 23rd. I had to go through quite a few sources to make sure it was a clear May 23. Okay.
So May 23, 1974, we have a postcard that's mailed to Dear King, and it's a postcard out of Mackenzie River, Oregon, which to me was just a rehash of DB Cooper, him sending that communication connection that has occurred, stating this was me, I was there, now this is what we're doing. And we've seen a lot of these postcards from early on, back in Black Dahlia, where he would use it from a location or a place that he had been in order to mail his messages. This is addressed to Richard Nixon. It says, Dear King, we know where Patty Hearst is, but wait till we get your daughter, a concerned citizen for freedom. And it's addressed to Richard Nixon, the White House, Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. So mentioning Patty Hearst after we see the SL, well, we're going to see the SLA letter here shortly in 1974 talking about Patty Hearst again. And that's from the Zodiac saying that Nixon's daughter, now I'm not sure if he's calling King Richard Nixon, now that we know that there's this Rebozo Nixon connection to King, if he is referring to the daughter of Martin Luther King or the daughter of Richard Nixon as being next. But we see that next. What's that?
Or Elvis.
Or Elvis. We have the Elvis Presley postcard as well. So there's that's 3. There's your 3, right?
Well, yes, and there's more than that, I think. And also that document is Zodiac Jack, cryptic as hell, as you guys can tell. Look at the word "but" with the JT right behind the B.
Do you know where this was mailed out of, Harriette?
Where this was mailed out of? Again, I had to do some searching. I believe it's from San Jose, California, zip code 95128.
And then look at DA.
From San Jose, right in the area where I believe he had that, the camera stuff, and the dark room in that area.
Doctor also instead of daughter. Cryptic as hell, big time. Wow.
So
that's a link to the Ramsey note.
That's
when did you send this
G.
to me, Nanette?
I'm not
Do you
sure.
remember when you
but I
sent
want to
this
remind
to me?
everybody before we get in. I want to remind everybody before we get into the solve, and I need to kind of quickly move this along. That Harriette and I do completely different research. She's not aware of what's in my presentation. At the same time, I'm not aware of the information that she's using to come up with these solves. But when they start to crisscross each other, like this stuff with King and Rebozo and Nixon and Elvis Presley and all that stuff, you have to start to wonder where that coincidence is going to lead you. And the crisscross over from this Christmas stamp in the middle of May, which is the irony of, and we know the stamps were important. Harriette's solve of the Dear King postcard, and we know now May 23rd, the postcard image is of Mackenzie River, Oregon, and the 3 sisters in the background, it says. So that's how this postcard relates back to D.B. Cooper, because it's a postcard from Oregon, and we traditionally see the Zodiac picking up postcards in one crime and then mailing and using them in another, almost as if to connect the stuff.
Right. And
all I know is
there's a Mackenzie newspaper too.
What's that?
Yes.
There's a Mackenzie newspaper, and they wrote extensively about the D.B. Cooper caper, a lot of details.
Oh,
I find the author though online. It did not credit an author. It was like Mackenzie newspaper just wrote it, and they did not credit an author for their articles. The ones
or reporter or what have you. So this was a lot of information. You basically took all of the information from this postcard, you unabbreviated it, and then you used that to anagram out this message, correct?
Yeah, and when you sent it to me, I said, wow. I said, well, I'll get to that shortly. And then when I started working on it, I had to keep telling myself, you wanted to do this, you wanted to do this.
Harriette,
it kept getting bigger and bigger. Go.
I know. Okay. I can't waste those seconds on that. We've only got minutes left of this. Can you read the solve that you got? Can you read the solve?
Oh my God. Yes, it is. Let me just read it completely. Here it is. It's to Randolph Hearst, business address, California, zip code 94103, Mickey, that's M-I-K-I, Scott, bought 8-cent stamp, telephone, Mackenzie River letter to University of North Carolina, Crown Title, Imperial Wizard, Louis Beams, Bruce Ivins, Lebanon, Ohio house, from Postcard King, zip code 94701 site. That's in Berkeley. Anyways, it's saying, we've got famed Hearst child on LSD and violent robbery, zip code 94122. And then he goes on to say, Caroline Davis, witness Napa Sheriff Deputy Ken Narrow Horlo murder. Oh my God. Scared Simpson came, help Walsh spouse poisoned her. John Edward Walsh smuggled dead Dennis Arthur Simpson from Manitoba, Canada in duffel bag. dump in Weeks Creek, Santa Rosa, California. Use same duffel bag for Taba Weiss, Fred Midler, Atlantic recording star, daughter Bet with Klaus Chrisman, 8 dozen Nazi gold rings, cocaine. So, next execute order by Nixon is the German National by Hilliard, Bill Hilliard, on July 7th, 1974, and zip code 94116. Future Victims by NASA Robert Abel, Texas, who hit Coles Wilson, her best friend, responding officer Tattletale, Allison Craven, and Gloria Gonzalez, who took the erotic pictures sent to Todd Carmen, Nay Tran, Texas roommate / tenants. Then it's going on to say, with Aryan Nations, Harold Klaus' second cousin, Ralph Casasanto, he's a nomenesio. Then it's saying, let Boy Dean marry Tina Lynn, hippie, lightning, amen, commissioned with physics, Tom Kitchens. He's the husband of Judy Bloom, super fudge, by the way. Anyway, so
really?
Sterile Church of Jesus Christ, yep. So Sterile Church of Jesus Christ, Hayden, Idaho pastor. I got all of this out of this. Planned the family of San Bernardino hit with Sister Susan, drop off baby Holly, who's not even born yet, in northern Santa Fe. Sign up little infant for adoption. New Mexico, future FBI cold cases. I avenge SB4 Coon, who saved my son, 68 Mekong Delta, in 75. Execute order, Momo, that's Giancana, eat my 6 bullets. Frank Sheeran, execute order, Cappuccino Lover, and then come poop, Papa, in 75. And then he's saying again, for Kama Healy, Rebe Son, 1981, and then he's tripping on the LSD. He breaks off and says, acknowledge, can't stop us. 53, 3 Cruel, Mickey Finn, Feldman, George Hunter White, Gottlieb, Olson and I, Cocktail, Vivid LSD, Ike Eisenhower and Saudi execute order, an execute order trip, 1953, Icult, operations order, Modus Tollens. He's saying we got to reverse this. 9/11/01, Bin Laden Group, and this the square with the 2 X's for the towers. Terrorist attack, towers fall, time bomb, 666, shame CIA, think World Trade Center, years of documents in order, Department of Defense, AIM strain files. Tower 1 is going to go down 10 a.m., 28 minutes and 2 seconds. Tower 2, 9 a.m., 59. Then somebody's going to say, let's roll. Then it's saying Tower 7 at 5 p.m., 20 minutes and 33 seconds, and 5 a.m., 20 minutes and 56 seconds. There's bombs in there. Then he's saying thereafter he's to do the Operation Midnight Climax, Anthrax, Kinetic Energy, Weapons of Mass Destruction, Mail, Execute Order, Eisenhower 1953 MK Ultra era. He's to finish out what he's been programmed to do. And then he's saying he's going to rob Mar-a-Lago of his Northwest Orient toy, and he's going to kill Robert Donati, and then Tot Harmon, July 07. And then he's saying, sign your Zodiac. I got all of that out of that.
Wow.
That is crazy.
To get that done.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Well, it definitely is leading us.
I noticed
the
reference to WT7, and that went down, and no plane hit that. There was no reason for WT7 to go down.
Controlled demolition.
Yes, there was a reason for number 7 to go down. If people weren't aware that the Treasury and the CIA operated in the same building in building number 7, and I think that there were some thoughts that at the time the Bush family had absconded with about 270 trillion of our Social Security funds, and that information and those records would have been inside the Treasury. So they found with MK Ultra they couldn't destroy all of the files because somebody accidentally filed enough evidence in another location that was separate from those files that allowed them to come back and actually out them about MK Ultra. So my mind says we've got to take the whole building down, because if we don't, something's going to be left behind to be found.
Bush 41. I found Bush 41.
Motive.
Yeah, it definitely goes to motive.
The time that the towers were going to go down. This is in 1974. World Trade Center number 7 wasn't even built then yet.
You know how they set that
the exact
thermite off?
times are in there.
That CIA building had a gigantic generator, and they used the Star Wars weapon, which was a microwave weapon, to set off the charges on the floors. They aimed it at the towers and bang, 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 all the way down, using Building 7 to do it. That's what the experts say, and I agree that that's probably how that way they didn't have to wire that building. They could bring it down remotely from Building 7, and then they cover up the evidence by bringing down Building 7 for no apparent reason.
No apparent reason other than the evidence that would have been found if they didn't bring that building down.
And the media covered it up. The Building 7 thing was not reported. But I found a Bush 41 head.
All three look like demolitions.
Yeah, controlled demolition.
Towers look like demolitions. They went straight down.
Even Trump hinted that when he was younger in the day. He said, "Oh, those are pretty stout buildings." So yeah, he knew it also.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying he was in on it, but he knew.
A little bit more on Nixon at this point in time, and we can see the point out here. We've got the NASA Apollo stamps used by the Zodiac. We've got the Eisenhower stamps that are used. We've got the let's see, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Eisenhower, and then the NASA Apollo mission stamp. And that stuff is all really kind of just circling around the Zodiac, his information, and the politicians that he's calling out in the middle of it. It says in Nixon's second term, Nixon ordered an airlift to resupply Israeli losses in the Yom Kippur War, a war which led to the oil crisis at home. And didn't you just get done saying that his father was the person who invented the drilling to be able to drill for oil?
No, that was Howard Hughes was.
Howard Hughes.
Oh, okay.
So by late,
so Howard Hughes is who you were saying was self-made money.
Yes, Howard Hughes Tool Company. Howard Hughes earned his money, probably honestly for the most part.
By late 1973.
Womanizer too.
By late 1973, the Nixon administration's involvement in Watergate eroded his support in Congress and the county. On August 9th of 1974, facing almost certain impeachment and removal from office, Nixon resigned the presidency. Afterwards, he was issued a pardon. Why are these people always getting pardons?
They got Gerald Ford.
If you bring down Nixon, you're going to bring down everybody else. That's why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He got Gerald Ford, who was on the Warren Commission, and they came up with the magic bullet bullshit. So,
Ford was a spy for Hoover on the Warren Commission, and then he was never elected vice president, never elected president, but he was both.
Yeah.
Nice little slide in. I don't know that we have enough time at this point to go into I was going to go into your overall bus bomb solve, which seems to be pretty long here. So we might want to go ahead and wait.
Long.
Yeah, we might want to go ahead and wait for that until next week. Yeah. So if there's any other information you guys would like to share, we've got about 2 minutes, it looks like, or a little under 2 minutes.
Quick question for Harriette. I assume from past episodes that sometimes when you assemble these anagram solves that there are things on there that don't make immediate sense to you, but you jot them down. Is that correct? In other words, later on?
When I was seeing that the times were showing up for the towers, I said, wait a minute. Is that the right times? So, I'm seeing things that come out, and then I have to double check and verify, to validate the solve.
Right.
So, yes.
Very good. Thank you.
And then somehow it's crisscrossing over into my own investigations from FOIA files and other items. When I go down a hole, that hole usually bubbles up and overflows with information that's consistently coming out in her solves.
And my investigation is circuitous. I just go and look at this stuff and look for what I can observe from the early crimes to later crimes. And I do a circle back and I find the things. I pick up all the things as I go. So all this stuff links in a huge circle. And that's the way Jack did it.
All right. Well, that's about all. That's about all we've got, you guys. It is 10:50. I hope everybody had a wonderful Independence Day and happy 4th of July. Thank everybody again for being here, and we will see you all next Friday.
See you, kids.
110 degrees.
Happy weekend.
Thanks, Harriet.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Oh,